Welcome to Hoystory on Air, Season 2, Episode 31. It is August 18th, 2026. Apologize for the lack of regular podcasts like this one and the shorts as well recently. We had a death in the family, and that has changed kind of my workload as far as things that I need to do and get done and all that jazz. So, working our way through on that. This is a quick one. Not sure how long this will last, but if you haven't bought my book, please buy my book. QR code up there. Fact Checking Frauds. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Audible. This is something that I touch on in my book is science feedback. It is a fact checker. They are a fact checker that focus on science, specifically, climate science, medicine, that sort of stuff. They are defenders of the consensus, the science with a trademark after it. That's what this website does. Unlike most of the fact checkers I talk about in my book, science feedback is focused. They don't come from a journalistic background. Okay, their editors and whatnot are scientists of not too much renown usually. There was one guy who was criticizing the guys over at Series Science, who specifically, I'm blanking on his name, Willie Soon. And Willie Soon has published a ton of peer-reviewed studies on climate science. He basically debunks kind of the catastrophic anthropogenic global warming narrative. But the guy they have over at Science Feedback criticizing him has posted a few papers on carbon sequestration. It's like, I liken in the book to, I think, a high school tennis player critiquing the Major League Baseball home run king swing. You both swing something, but they're different, and you're in high school, and this guy's, hot stuff. So, science feedback is listed here as expired with the International Fact Checking Network. I had kept this website up in a browser window and just kind of hitting refresh every once in a while because, their accreditation expired back on May 10th of this year. The IFCN often puts this stuff kind of off. They're not really prompt on this. They may be going through the process of getting renewed. Now it's renewed every 2 years. It used to be every 1 year. And so I was just kind of waiting to see what the latest report was going to be on science feedback, because a couple of years ago, when I was writing my book, I put in a complaint on science feedback and how it does not meet all of the IFCN's criteria. And I submitted it to science feedback as the IFCN says they want you to do. Science feedback never responded. And so I copied and forwarded it to the International Fact Checking Network. As you can see here, I sent it to complaints@ifcn.org, which is where they told you to send it, and it bounced back. I mentioned this in my book. And I mentioned a little bit about science feedback. I don't go into this complaint. I was kind of waiting to see what happened. I wanted to see if they addressed anything in my complaint, because this is problematic, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going to have these standards that organizations have to meet, then make sure they meet them. And so I'm going to kind of go through this. I don't know why science feedback has expired. I don't know if they didn't bother reapplying. I don't know if they reapplied and were rejected because of some of the things I point to here. But it very well could be. I kind of want to take credit for this. I've sent an email off to the Poynter Institute saying, what's the situation with science feedback? I do not expect to get an answer. For an organization that's all about openness and transparency, they do not like answering questions. They do not like, it's an embarrassment, frankly. So, kind of want to go over quickly the ways that science feedback violates the rules and why the way they operate, they shouldn't have had IFCN imprimatur in the first place. So criteria 3.1 is the applicant identifies the source of all significant evidence used in their fact checks, providing relevant links where the source is available online in such a way that users can replicate their work if they wish. In cases where identifying the source would compromise the source's personal security, the applicant provides as much detail as compatible with the source's safety. Science feedback alone among fact checkers is inconsistent in providing readers with a link to the source of the claim they are fact checking. Links listed under source go to the science feedback's own web pages for those categories, names, or keywords, not to the source of the claim. The original source for the claim is never listed under references at the bottom of the article. In other articles, the original source may be found via links in the text of the analysis itself, but they may not stand out and can be difficult to locate. For example, a fact check on a PragerU video featuring scientist Judith Curry provides two source links. One goes to Science Feedback's fact checks of PragerU videos, the other to Science Feedback fact checks of Judith Curry. There is no link to the video on PragerU on YouTube. There's no link there, and I can click on this. It pops up here. No evidence for this, and if we hover over the source, you see in the lower left-hand corner, or maybe you can't. My little thing's apparently it's not doing it. But if you hover over it, it says https sciencefeedback.org outlet PragerU. And if I hover over this one, same thing, Judith Curry. So if you want to find this video she did, you're going to have to go searching for it yourself because you can't find this. Okay? So that's the kind of garbage they do. I say, in fact, science feedback appears to systematically fail to link to PragerU when it is a source that it is fact-checking. The same thing is done on this fact check of a Daily Skeptic article on carbon isotopes do not show humans' climate impacts too small to notice. A reader will have to use a search engine to locate the original article because science feedback doesn't link to it. Now, I think this is a strategy on science feedback's part. If they linked to it in Google's algorithm, that would give those sites more heft, more they'd get linked to more, that sort of, they get more credibility. So I think that's a conscious decision that science feedback makes. Sadly, or I guess it's a good thing that IFCN doesn't like that. Okay? We'll see. Another one, criteria 2.3. The applicant checks all key elements of claims against more than one named source of evidence, save where the one source is the only source relevant on the topic. I point out in the two cases identified below, fact checks on tangentially related claims were applied to a video and a news article to limit their reach on social media before science feedback had checked any element of the claims made, let alone all key elements. And this is something this is mentioned in my book. I encourage you, again, buy my book. In two cases identified below, John Stossel's video Government-Fueled Fires was fact-checked and throttled on Facebook due to a science feedback fact-check that was published weeks before his video ever appeared online. The claim in quotes that science feedback checked forest fires are caused by poor management, not climate change, was attributed to Facebook and Facebook users, not Stossel. The words in quotes never appeared in Stossel's video. In a follow-up video where Stossel recounts his effort to get the warning label removed, the new censors, he interviews two science feedback reviewers who were sources in the fact check. Neither had seen Stossel's video before. As I point out, this is a huge no-no. You don't do that. This is Facebook at the time and other social media companies gave the IFCN this power to distribute to its members. Science Feedback abused it like no one else, frankly. I couldn't find anyone else who, we did this fact check on somebody else, we're going to apply it to this new thing that somebody said new and throttle it. That's what they do. And it shouldn't be done, and they should, them not having IFCN approval is the right answer. But I got a feeling that IFCN, they may be a little bit ashamed of it. I don't know. The second one I pointed out was In Much to Forgive by John Tierney, reviews a variety of evidence, both scientific and anecdotal, showing that the continued widespread masking of children in the spring of 2021 in response to COVID-19 pandemic was no longer justified if it ever had been. Tierney's article was labeled partly false information and throttled on Facebook because he cited a study, one among many sources in his piece, that Science Feedback had fact-checked some weeks before. Science Feedback did not contact Tierney before applying their fact-check of that one scientific study to Tierney's much larger and more expansive piece. Tierney's follow-up piece on his attempt to get the label removed is, "This article is partly false." In this article, it becomes clear that Science Feedback is doing little more than a post hoc rationalization for its ruling. They had not analyzed or addressed any of his other sources in the initial fact check that was applied to him, which included a study from the British Medical Journal, masking guidance by the World Health Organization that conflicts with that promoted by Science Feedback, a couple of Swedish studies on masking, and an article published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences on learning loss. In both examples, Science Feedback failed to follow criteria 2.4 by checking all key elements of claims they were purportedly fact-checking. The fact checks that were applied to their pieces didn't apply to them at all. This can barely be called fact-checking, but it is more like censorship. Science Feedback initially identified something in each piece they didn't like and attempted to censor it. Actual fact-checking didn't even begin to occur until Tierney and Stossel complained. Science Feedback then responded with justifications for the applied fact checks that reek of little more than post hoc arguments with little substance. Both fact checks also appear to be violations of the aforementioned criteria 3.1, since to this day neither of them links or even provides a reference in their text to the City Journal article or YouTube video they were used to censor. If that isn't enough, I got more. Criteria 4.5 is the applicant seeks, where possible, to contact those who made the claim to seek supporting evidence. In each of the cases listed as violating criteria 2.3, neither Stossel nor Tierney was contacted by Science Feedback before the fact check was applied to their stories. So those two appear to be a violation of criteria 4.5 as well. In fact, most Science Feedback fact checks do not indicate within their analysis that the subject of the fact check was ever contacted before publication to answer sometimes serious questions/charges before the fact check was published. Additionally, a Science Feedback fact check on a Daily Skeptic article accused the scientists who authored the preprint study the article is based upon of cherry picking. The study's authors state they were not contacted prior to the publication of Science Feedback's fact check and offered the opportunity to answer their charges. Furthermore, the Science Feedback fact check charged that researchers used p-hacking to achieve their allegedly faulty results. The researchers provided Science Feedback with detailed evidence and supplemental materials to show they did not use significant testing to create this list, and the aggregation of outcomes was clinically based, not arbitrary, all of which makes the p-hacking claim incorrect. Yet Science Feedback, incredibly, claims that the response didn't contain evidence demonstrating that our reporting of the flaws in the preprint was inaccurate. Science Feedback may contend there are flaws, but to claim p-hacking was used to reach a predetermined study when the study's authors have credibly demonstrated that that was not true, at the very least should require that charge be removed from the fact check. Criteria 2.2. The applicant uses the best available primary, not secondary sources of evidence, whenever suitable primary sources are available. Where suitable primary sources are not available, the applicant explains the use of the secondary source. I point to, in this 2021 fact check of an Epoch Times article on a new paper by Ronan Connolly et al., Science Feedback recycles scientists' feedback from Timothy Osborne, Britta Voss, and Patrick Brown on previous fact checks that are 3, 3, and 5 years older, respectively, than the paper at issue. Science may at times move slowly, but if a new article with new analysis is published in 2021, it hardly seems like the best available primary sources of evidence would be recycled evidence from up to a half a decade ago. And then I noted that I had filed this complaint with the organization through this contact tool. See attached PDF. So that's what they were doing, ladies and gentlemen. We shouldn't be surprised. Science Feedback, probably most egregiously of all the fact checkers I looked at for my book, and I looked at a lot of them, use their power to censor. And losing that power is a good thing. I just wonder how it happened. Never got any response from either International Fact Checking Network or Science Feedback to my complaints. We'll see if the email I sent off an hour ago ever gets responded to. I got a feeling I'm going to make a phone call tomorrow. It took a little looking. I found a phone number for Pointer. I'm going to call tomorrow and see what I can find out. I may write this up for an article, see if I can get City Journal to publish it, or maybe Hot Air or something, someplace else. But it's a good thing that Science Feedback no longer has this power. Facebook in the US doesn't use these fact checkers anymore, but they do use them overseas for Facebook in other countries. And TikTok and others still use them. So here's hoping that this is the beginning of the end for Science Feedback. They are a bunch of activists masquerading as unbiased, disinterested, certainly not disinterested, but masquerading as unbiased fact checkers. That's all I got for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, buy the book, read the book. Mark Hemingway over at The Federalist and Real Clear Politics said that this was must read for anyone who wants to be a media literate, and he's right. I constantly kind of see people saying, "Oh, the fact checker said it, and so it's beyond question." No, it's often very much spot on question. You can't trust them. You can't trust Science Feedback. I think my complaint was pretty damning. We'll see if I'd be curious to see what happened. I mean, I almost, hope that the reviewer looked at it and said, he's got you dead to rights. Are you going to change anything, or you just want to stop this, charade right now? And maybe they decided to stop the charade right now. It would be better if they had applied and Pointer said no because you're misbehaving. We'll see. Again, ladies and gentlemen, buy my book. Follow me on the various social medias. It's going to pop up after I hit this button. Got a lot of people watching my shorter videos on Facebook. Thank you for doing that. Follow me on Facebook. Share me. Follow me on X. All that jazz. Like, subscribe. Tell your friends about me. And buy my book. See you next time.